Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about my 5 years with OpenShift, my 5 years last year. First, I'm going to start to present myself. I'm CTO at CapJ, head of Cloud Native Infrastructure Tribes. I've been practicing martial arts for 25 years. I'm really going to be happy to talk about that with you, and triathlon also. And I've been in open source for the last soon 20 years, particularly active in open source community. Today I'm an open source community member for the Open Source Summit at the Linux Foundation. And as I mentioned, 5 years in CapJ, based in France, Southwest, Albi. Really enjoyed my time here. I enjoy, you could come here also to visit my hometown. First, I say I started 5 years ago with OpenShift is not really true. My first time with OpenShift was 2014. I started with the OpenShift 2. It was really interesting. It was before Kubernetes. It was Mesos Marathon. I don't know if you're looking about that. But I would like to be sure you're going to focus on the next slide. It's really important because it was a really good time at this time. But it's time to forget. OK? After OpenShift 3, we forget about what happened before, because it was the first version of OpenShift with Kubernetes inside. And we have to rethink about what was Kubernetes. To be honest, I wasn't on my first time with Kubernetes, because I work on Kubernetes for around 7 years now. And it was my first time with OpenShift. Honestly, it was for an aerospace company based in close to my own time, Toulouse. It was really interesting, I could say. On Hyper-V deployment, OpenShift version 3.5, you know what I mean? Infranode, many managed cluster and so on. It was a nightmare, to be honest. Okay, and a nightmare we have to run 24/7. Okay, but what I really like about OpenShift, particularly because I was on Kubernetes upstream version before, it was a professional way of addressing Kubernetes. You have a true PaaS platform. You have the capabilities to integrate your developers on top of that. It was really interesting. And it's based on Rails. I'm agreed with what we said this morning. Rails is the most important part for OpenShift on most of the way, you know. Even if my favorite distribution of Red Hat was, Linux wasn't at the beginning Red Hat, to be honest. But anyway. But another things, very complex. The first cluster on the version 3 could be really expensive. We're talking about 7 to 9 VMs minimum, or servers. And most of our clients, I'm talking about many clients, they hardening their platform as they harden their operating system, meaning developers had no right at this time. You know, they just use the platform, they shut up, and they go on production. And it was really difficult. That's why I say it was great. But if you know the story, you know something's going to happen next. And we run. I think this is also just to, maybe you don't know CapJ. CapJ with 360,000 people in the world, okay? And we have an IT. The first thing we did our homework. We deploy OpenShift at scale for us. And we're moving all our .NET application on OpenShift. Okay, we're talking about 300 nodes. This is something huge, and we did it. And we also work with aerospace company, and we helping a company and insurance firm to migrate their containers workload from old-fashioned approach, container-based Docker Swarm, Docker-based approach to OpenShift. We're talking about 20,000 containers. And it was really interesting, because for the first time, we were talking with clients about a large-scale project, an interesting project, production, really constrained environment where we could use OpenShift. But it wasn't enough. Honestly, it was at this time really hard to deploy OpenShift, and we have to move forward. And that's why I really welcome the 4 version. And we really fast and quickly upgrade all our cluster clients on this version, because this version brings more things. That's the first. First, I put easy to deploy, easy to manage, because I'm working on 24/7 SLA team. You know, nothing is easy when you go in production, okay? Nothing is easy when you have to manage some requirement, particularly, for example, CoreOS It's a really interesting operating system. You have no team today on run accepting CoreOS as by default operating system, for example. You have to convince them to harden this new version of operating system. You have to align yourself, but this is really interesting, and I'm not going to say everything what has been said this morning, about more adaptable security and compliance. I'm going to focus more on the experience I had the last year. This one is just changing ops mind. I think, honestly, today I'm CTO, I'm doing consulting for my clients. I'm a psychotherapist, okay? 99% of my job today is to do psychotherapy with ops team and dev team to explain them how they're going to work together, how they're going to have to work together when they're using OpenShift. And this is mostly what we have to do, because after that, today, we could say we're not playing the same games now with OpenShift. I think if people are thinking OpenShift was still a small platform, it's ready to start and to go, this is not what we're handling today. Today we're working in UK, in US, migrating V3 to V4. By the way, it's pretty straightforward. If you use MTC, I don't know if you know the tool, based on Conveyor, you could do that really great. You could use also Cas10, you have another technology. Today, same thing. I was in Canada for 5 years ago, before Capgemini, and we did PCF stuff, Pivotal Cloud Foundry, and we even deployed the first PKS cluster, Pivotal Kubernetes, on Azure at this time. And it was interesting. PCF was a nightmare on the operating side, okay? It was really great on the platform. This is really a framework to deploy application and to development, but it was a nightmare. We were through a lot of complexity. No one would like to do whatever we want on this platform, because the platform was, they thought about the platform on the way of, this is a developer platform, and we oblige you to deploy it in production. It's not what is DevOps, what is GitOps, and so on. And this is OpenShift today. No, this is not a dev platform. This is an ops and a dev platform. Each one could really have what they want on this platform. They could address this. And today, we are really managing and migrating large-scale projects on this and try to modernize application. And side to side, we're next to Red Hat. I think this is really important to work as a partner. And we have questions about the UX there. And they ask, what do you think about an issue and how you manage proactively your issue? I pay Red Hat, I'm a GSI. I manage proactively my issue. Be sure my client paying my client, because I'm not paying directly Red Hat. I could say, oh, good. But I ask Red Hat to be sure they are well compliant, to be sure they're going to address. I use the images from Red Hat and so on, to be sure, and this is really a partnership on this side. I would like to highlight some projects. This one is really interesting, but someone did the best presentation than mine this morning about what they did in Japan, what they're doing in Japan. But same thing. We're starting 5G. We have a big 5G program in Capgemini to help the telco clients to integrate 5G and Wi-Fi and so on. We started with OpenShift and KVM. And now we just integrated OpenShift and virtualization. And now we installing one of the first version of OpenShift Edge with a 3-node cluster. And we're really, really, really excited by what happened with HyperShift and so on this side. I'm continuing another project I would like to highlight. This is a use case. Today we have many clients working on multi-cloud approach, meaning, and this is, we're working with an insurance company, a global insurance company, where they decided to implement OpenShift as a standard layer on top of AWS, Azure, and OpenStack for private cloud. And this is really interesting because, honestly, when OpenShift came, I remember, I see some, Yassin is in the room, no? When Yassin first time from Red Hat came to me to say, yeah, we would like to put OpenShift on any hyperscaler. I've been working on myself with AKS, EKS. I say, no way, it's not going to happen. I made a mistake, sorry. Now it's happening, And why is happening? Because For big clients like this insurance company, it's simpler to have one way to produce software, leveraging the same standard, the same security pattern, and so on, within leveraging OpenShift and duplicate this deployment on every cloud cluster you're going to have globally. And this insurance company, for example, today we're migrating about 350 applications on top of this platform. They have an OpenShift cluster on AWS for US, on Azure, on Alibaba, for example, an OpenShift cluster on Alibaba, and so on. They really decided to say, okay, we're going to standardize everything on top of OpenShift and migrating every workload depending on each continent, leveraging different, and for sure OpenStack on private cloud, which is the best solution still on private cloud. The last, what I'm really, honestly, I think this is ePBF, this one, if you don't look at this. Everything was already said this morning about HyperShift. Okay, HyperShift, really interesting. As I say, we're doing 5G, but also we have plenty of clients, as we just say, they have multiple clusters, and now you could have one single node cluster, which is really interesting to have this, and to deploy not only on edge computing, but for some use case. For example, we're working for aerospace company or defense company. They have to deploy a mini cluster in different isolated environment for security constraint and legacy constraint, and they could use that kind of deployment. This is really interesting for us. It's a good move, I think, on this side. Really enjoy. Kepler, same thing. Someone already told about this morning. Everything it's about energy consumption. In Europe, we are really sensible on this part. This is really important. IAML, it's okay. Virtualization, honestly, to avoid to have a KVM side to your OpenShift cluster, it's a great stuff. Okay, and try to avoid also VMs when you don't need, or VMware when you don't need, it's okay. You know, I really prefer to integrate natively VMs on OpenShift. This is about security. I don't know if you know ePBF, it's Cilium. ePBF, it's Linux, but you have Cilium and everything is mesh. It's really interesting now how you could isolate and how far you could go on the security side. Leveraging open source tools and those native tools and integrating within Red Hat. OpenShift is really interesting. I see a lot of clients now. Why they're using that? Because they could do deployment on multiple clusters, on multiple areas, and they would like to securize the backend of the cluster, the VMs and the Linux itself, independently of the application side. And ePBF, for example, it's really interesting because you could do that, and you could focus service mesh only on the application side. Kasten, we've been working with Kasten the last couple of years because it's really thinking about how you're going to back up your application. Because backupping Kubernetes or OpenShift is pretty easy forward. You have your etcd, you have your script deployment. Okay, but backing your application you have on top of that is really complex. And I remember I have a client, they're using AKS, Azure Kubernetes. And they mentioned to me, yeah, but I asked them, do you have backup? Because we are a 24/7 also, as I say, a run company. I have to ask that kind of question. And they say, for sure, we have it. How you back up your application on top of Kubernetes on OpenShift? But we're using the native services we have on Azure. You don't have it on Azure. Just check the documentation. You don't have backup plan. You have a plan to back up. You have to build your plan. But you have to rely on your own. You know, that's important. That's why I put different stuff here. And I say a lot about myself, but for sure, we are a team. We are plenty of people. I have 120 people only on my tribes. And this is all the work, I think, with partner, with clients. I really like the period and the moment we have right now. I think this is really an interesting moment. I just looking the time, I think I was too fast. I've been too fast right now. That's why I would like really a big thanks. And maybe see you if you would like to discuss, or maybe if you have a question, because I was really fast. And I'm going to be happy to ask any questions afterward. 5 minutes. That's it.